Hello and welcome back to the Debrief here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me live from Anfield is Theo Squires, coming to you just after Liverpool's 1-0 win over Fulham at Anfield, courtesy of Mohamed Salah's first half penalty. Obviously, that makes it two from his last two, having missed his previous two before that, Theo. We'll start just on that. Obviously, there was some slight calls for maybe Fabinho to step up. We know he's taken penalties in the past after Mohamed Salah had missed the two penalties in a row. Do you think he's firmly put those fears to bed now?
Yeah, I think so. They're always going to go through these phases, aren't they? You're going to miss a couple. It's just part and parcel of the game. Salah's probably been a bit too clever when we look at those two misses. Like, he's trying to score the perfect penalty, isn't he? Putting it in the top corner or the bottom corner against Bournemouth and Arsenal, and it's not quite worked for him. It's just, I can't remember which week it was, but for one of those, it coincided with LFC TV's documentary or program, whatever, with Steven Gerrard, where he admitted on that he doesn't like taking penalties. So obviously there was a bit more talk about it there, going, oh, we shouldn't be on them. But he's just simplified it since then. He's taken two penalties now against Spurs and Fulham today. No nonsense, just smashed them high down the middle. Keeper's not saving them, and it'd be a relief to him to get those goals there. If he'd scored the other two, of course, he'd already broken the 30-goal barrier this season. He'd have overtaken Steven Gerrard on the all-time scoring charts. That'll have to wait for another day. He's on 29 now, one behind Gerrard in sixth place. But we know those records are going to come. He is still Liverpool's most lethal finisher for a reason. And a game of fine margins today. It came down to a penalty. It's just a shame when you think of those two missed penalties. If he scores them, we're only a point behind United. Granted, United have a couple of games in hand, but it would have made that top four chase look a hell of a lot more interesting. Maybe there'll be a slip-up. Who knows? All Liverpool can keep doing is pick up their own points, and that's what they've done tonight, thanks to Salah stepping up when it mattered.
Yeah, you mentioned it was a game of fine margins, and I wanted to talk to you on that one because it obviously it was only a 1-0 win, and normally sort of the last 10 minutes it would be firmly in the nervy category. It didn't really feel like it ever quite got to that point tonight. Obviously, Cordova-Reid missed that chance right at the end, but other than that, it wasn't really, despite us having looked defensively vulnerable all season, it wasn't too nervy of a 1-0 win, was it really?
Yes and no. Like, there were nerves to it. Like, Fulham did create chances. Alisson had to make a couple of big saves tonight. Vinicius from close range as well. And that there were spaces. Harry Wilson in the first half in particular was getting behind Kostas Tsimikas a lot. For the majority, Liverpool defended well. Virgil van Dijk in particular getting on the end of crosses, getting them away. And then far post crosses in the second half. Trent just always seemed to be there to head them away, and Liverpool get the danger away. Maybe there'd be a few more nerves if Liverpool were realistically fighting for a top four finish, or if Fulham actually had something to play for. Let's be honest, Fulham are on the beach at the moment. They're not going down. They're not going to get into Europe. They're just finishing as high as they can in mid-table. So there's not that same pressure on them to really push for a late goal, as we've seen some sides at Anfield this season. They played well without really threatening too much. Liverpool played reasonably well without having to do too much themselves. It's just one of those games, isn't it? Early May, nothing to play for one side, and the other side just meandering towards the end of what's been a disappointing campaign, trying to finish as strongly as possible and see where it takes them, already looking towards next season.
Yeah, trying to finish as strongly as possible, and that's now 5 Premier League wins in a row. Another clean sheet in there as well. And like I say, although some defensive frailties were seen tonight, on the whole, pretty decent. So it's certainly positive trends and positive signs heading into the end of the season, isn't it, so far, Theo?
Well, when you look at this winning run, the 5 games, Liverpool have won them in very different ways, from thrashing Leeds United to almost throwing it away against Tottenham and clawing it back, holding on against Nottingham Forest. There's a lot of variety in there when they've had to grind it out or when they've just been really confident. But in that run, they haven't had a clean sheet victory yet. They've conceded sloppy goals to pretty much every single team. So it's good to see them get one today. They still gifted Fulham chances. Imagine if Mitrovic wasn't suspended, if he was up front, he might have taken one of those chances, and it is another game without a clean sheet. But final whistle, 1-0. Liverpool have defended well in parts. It's just something they need to build on. Like when they were challenging for Premier League titles, guaranteed to be in the top 4 season after season, competing for those biggest prizes, it all came from this strong defence. where like you just need to score one goal and you win games. Like they were so good, especially when you think of the title-winning year or when they win the Champions League, whether it was Matip or Lovren or Gomez alongside Van Dijk. It was just so solid. We know how dangerous the fullbacks are. That's something they need to get back to. They need to rediscover. We all know how much Jurgen Klopp loves a clean sheet victory. So he'll be singing the praises of this one in the post-match press conference in, I'm guessing, 10 minutes time, 15 minutes time. But they just need more of that. What's quite telling, though, is you look at the lack of clean sheets. It's not just the Liverpool problem this season. Like the Premier League Golden Glove, Alisson's still quite high up there, really. Like he's probably not going to win it. I haven't won it last year. But yeah, he's third now, I believe, joint third. De Gea's winning it at the moment. Nick Pope's second. For him to be third when Liverpool have been as poor defensively as they have been, it's only 12 clean sheets. We've seen him win the Golden Glove award by pretty much keeping clean sheets in half his appearances. So that shows it's just been teams across the board. And you can look at maybe a mid-season World Cup, injuries and all these other things that Jurgen Klopp's moaned about throughout the season. But that'll be one of the things Liverpool will look to do very much next season. You bring in your new midfielders, you get the team playing back the way you want them to be playing, and you start keeping clean sheets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of there's a lot of debate in the comments right now over Darwin Nunez. It wasn't his finest performance. Even when he hadn't really played well earlier in the season, you could never really say he'd been quiet. But I think tonight, really, one of the first properly quiet-ish games he's had. Obviously, he can only be so quiet because that's the sort of player he is. He manages to win the penalty in the first half, and that's ultimately what's won Liverpool the game, isn't it? But he's been out of the starting lineup of late, and there's, like I say, debate in the comments of whether his best position is on the left or through the middle. Do you think he's just sort of struggling to find his feet at the moment in the side?
At the moment, he looks like a square peg in a round hole. Like when Liverpool weren't at the best early in the season, but we were seeing more from him. It was playing to his game. When it was those long balls over the top or down the line for him to really use his pace. But then Liverpool have reinvented themselves. They want to see more of a focal point in the middle. They look so much more comfortable and confident when it's Jota or Gakpo being like a false nine, but a number 9 as well. And I don't think that's something Nunez has really adapted to. He still works hard. He runs his socks off, and that's how he's got the penalty. He's alert. He's trying to get on the end of things, as we've seen all season. He's so enthusiastic. That's why the Kop and all the fans here chant his name so regularly. But earlier in the season, we were seeing him have 7 chances in a game, every single game, pretty much. And I don't think he really had a shot on target or a shot on goal tonight. I can't really recall one. It's not as though he was isolated either, because Liverpool were created chances. Things just weren't landing for him. And he just wasn't on the same wavelength as his teammates. There was a few where Trent's tried to put in a through ball for him, or Henderson, and it's just gone behind him and he's not looking that way. He's made a different run. Maybe that's because he's been out of the team a little bit. And, communication issues that have been well documented in recent weeks. But Liverpool, by getting back into winning ways recently, they have gone back to basics. It's a new formation, but, when they're bringing that pressing back, like Klopp said before, that it's hard for the team when they're adapting to this new formation, new set of defending. But if you throw in a new striker at top as well, it makes it a little bit more challenging. So I think Liverpool look more comfortable when it's Diaz there. He's had a year and a half playing this system. And you've got Jota there, speaks the language, been here for a few years. Gakpo, he's a new signing, but he speaks the language. He's fluent in English. It makes it that much easier for them to adapt. Whereas Nunez, he's still a long-term project. He's a young player, but I think he was always going to have ups and downs. It's basically what he's had all season. He's still scored 15 goals. That's a really impressive return. You just hope that before pre-season he can take those next big steps. But at the moment, you wouldn't have him in your strongest Liverpool starting 11. The only reason he started tonight is because Jota's taken a couple of knocks recently. Diaz, he's coming back from that long-term injury. Firmino's injured. And Gakpo, they want to rest him because they've had so many games recently. Whereas earlier in the season, when there was just pretty much 2-3 forwards available, he was starting every week. But then maybe he wouldn't have played as much earlier in the season if all these options had been available all season. Liverpool would have be able to manage him a bit more carefully. We've seen enough of him to be encouraged. I think it's promising signs for the future. It's a quiet game tonight. All strikers have them. But, you expect to see a much fitter, stronger, just a player who's on more of an understanding with his teammates next season than Darwin Nunez.
Yeah, well, from one South American forward onto another, Luis Diaz a bit less quiet tonight. I was really impressed with him. I've been really impressed in the last couple of games when he's been appeared. Just how sharp he is already, even if it is only 65 minutes or so we're getting out of him so far. Are you as impressed with just how sharp he's looked?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's shown exactly what Liverpool have been missing. If he hadn't been absent since October, who knows where the season might have ended up. If he hadn't needed surgery, maybe we would have actually enjoyed 2023 a little bit more. He's just a player that gets you off your seat. He makes things happen. He's explosive with that pace, drop of the shoulder, beating men, getting inside, and he's on the same wavelength as his teammates. He links up so well with the quick 1-2s, whether it's Curtis Jones or Mohamed Salah, or not as much like the fullback today because Costa Simicas, I think, had a poor game, but he's got that relationship with Andy Robertson too, and you're waiting to see him hit top form again. Like, it took Jota 2 months to get back to his best after a serious injury, but Diaz is showing more promising signs, I think, than Jota did originally. So give him a full. He's another player. Give him a full pre-season. Give him that summer break, and you're just itching to see what Luis Diaz turns up next season. Because last year he was superb. At the start of the season, first 2 months, he was Liverpool's best player. He's been robbed of 6 months of his career now, and I'm sure he's itching to get back at it. It's why Liverpool spent the money, and why all of a sudden you didn't really miss Sadio Mane, like this Liverpool legend who has been so emphatic and so dominant on that left wing year after year. Diaz essentially took his place for 6 months last year, and now he is the one that is going to be on that left-hand side, you'd imagine, for the next few years as Liverpool starting forward. Needs a few more goals to his game, I'm sure, but when you've been derailed by that injury, maybe they would have come this year. Still a very exciting player, and one Liverpool are lucky to have and delighted to have back in action, back fit. More is still to come.
It's a bit of a cliche, really, but I think Jota and Diaz are probably going to feel like bordering on new signings next season. You know, they've missed so much of this year, and as you say, who's to say how different this season could have been if we'd had one of, if not both of them, fit all year. But that's going to be all we've got time for on the debrief tonight. Liverpool making it 5 Premier League wins on the bounce with a 1-0 victory over Fulham. So thanks to Theo for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.